you ready?
Okay, so my name is John Wilton. I'm an instructor at Advanced CDL Driving Academy. First, we will perform a air brake test. The first step to that test is I'm going to take my wheel chock and put it behind my wheel so that my truck does not roll downhill. I will exit the truck with 3 points of contact. Because we're on a hill going downwards, I'm going to place the chock behind the wheel so we don't drift backwards. If my truck was facing forward down the hill, I'd place my wheel chock in the front. Wheel chock's good. I'm now going to enter the truck with 3 points of contact. My seatbelt is not cut, torn, or frayed. It's properly mounted and secured with all its nuts and bolts, and its proper color orange. It clicks, unclicks, and locks properly. I'm now going to safe start my truck and build the air pressure to its governor cutoff rate of 125 psi. Begin by turning my truck 2 clicks, and I'm looking for my ABS light and my DEF light have both came on and went off, indicating they're working properly. Now we'll start my truck. And while the air pressure is building to its governor cutoff rate, I will go ahead and perform my in-cab inspection, starting with my 2 door mirrors and my 2 hood mirrors are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts, clean and clear and adjusted to me. I'll move to my windshield. My windshield is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, no cracks or obstructions or illegal outdated stickers, and free of debris. My windshield wipers are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured with all its nuts and bolts, and is flush to the windshield, and my windshield washer fluid also works properly. I will come over to my turn signals. My headlights working properly, my high beams are working properly, my left signal, my right signal, and my 4-way flashers are all working properly. My air horn and my city horn are working properly. Come over to my defrost and my heater. My heater, the flow up top is working properly, and the airflow at the bottom is working properly. I have my 3 emergency equipments. I have my spare fuses and bulbs, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. I have my 3 reflective triangles, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, and they reflect light. I have my ABC rated fire extinguisher. My needle is in the green, properly secured and ready to use. I have my dome lights, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts. The sneeze you heard is my governor kicking out at 125, indicating my air tanks are full. So I'll now continue with my air brake test. I will turn my truck off, turn it back to the run position. I will release my knobs to let the air settle. Once the air settles, I will ask my examiner to time me for 1 minute, and I should not lose no more than 4 psi's. Mr. Examiner, can you time me for 1 minute so I do not lose more than 4 psi? They'll say begin. Put my foot on the brake. I'm watching my air gauge to make sure that I do not lose air. 1 minute is up. Mr. Examiner, I did not lose no more than 4 psi, indicating I have no leaks in my system. I now will fan my brakes down to 60 psi, where my low warning light and buzzer will come on. So my low warning light and buzzer has came on and is working properly. I will now continue to fan my brakes down between 25 and 45 psi, and my 2 spring valves will pop out, indicating they're working properly. of my spring valves have popped out, indicating they're working properly. I will now safe start my truck and build the air pressure back to 125 psi to perform my tug test. I'll put my foot on the accelerator and hold my RPMs between 10 and 1500 to help build air a little faster. Heard is my governor kicking out, indicating my air tanks are full at 125. I now will perform my tug test. I will put my foot on the brake. I will put my vehicle in drive. I will release my tractor brakes to test my trailer brakes, and I'll give a slight tug of the trailer. Okay, my tractor brakes held. My trailer brakes held, so now I will pull out my tractor brakes and push on my trailer brakes and repeat the step just to make sure that my tractor brakes held. They held, indicating they are working properly. So I'll put my vehicle in neutral. Next, I would explain my service brake test, which is I would drive forward at 5 miles per hour, placing my foot on the service brake and coming to a stop. My truck should not pull left or pull right, indicating that my slack adjusters are adjusted properly. That is the completion of my air brake and my in-cab inspection. I now will ask the examiner to step out and ask them if they can help me and assist me in checking my headlights, turn signals, and four-way flashers in the front, and my brake lights, turn signals, and four-way flashers in the rear. My examiner has told me that all of my lights and turn signals and emergency flashers are working, so I'll now exit the vehicle to do my outside pre-trip. First, I'll turn my truck off. I'll take the key with me and tell the examiner that the key is in my pocket. When exiting the vehicle, I will exit the vehicle with 3 points of contact. Come to the front of the truck. I have my 2 clearance lights and my 3 ID lights that are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, amber in color. I have my 2 door mirrors and 2 hood mirrors. They are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts. I have my headlight lenses and my turn light lenses, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, clear in color, and my turn signals are amber in color. I'll come down to below the motor. There's no oil or antifreeze or broken glass or hanging wires, indicating something is wrong. And also my truck is sitting properly left to right and front to back, indicating no suspension issues. I'll now pop my hood. Pop my hood, I will use 3 points of contact, 2 hands and a foot, pull, start with my coolant reservoir. It is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured with all its nuts and bolts. The hose is connected to my reservoir. It's not dry rotted or leaking. It is between minimum and maximum. It is a pressurized system, so it has room to expand. My caps are hand tight, and I would not check it when it's hot. My oil fill tube and dipstick are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, not leaking. I would check my oil dipstick by pulling it out, wiping it clean, inserting it, pulling it back out, making sure it reads between minimum and maximum, putting it back in. My power steering fluid reservoir is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured with all its nuts and bolts. Power steering hoses are not dry rotted or leaking. It is a sight glass. I can see that it is between minimum and maximum. If it did not have a sight glass and it had a dipstick, I would check it the same way as the oil. My air lines and compressor are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, not dry rotted and not leaking. My air compressor is located in the rear, which means it is belt driven. My power steering system, I have my U-joints, my steering shaft, U-joints, power steering gearbox, my pitman arm, my castle nut and cotter pins, my rubber bushings, and my drag link. All not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, not leaking, properly greased, no missing nuts or bolts. I then will have my suspension system. I have my leaf spring hanger, my leaf spring, my 2 U-bolts, my shock absorber, and my spring hinge in the rear. All not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, not shifted or scissored more than 1 inch, and not missing any nuts or bolts. I then will go to my braking system. I have my chamber hose. I have my ABS line. I have my brake chamber. I have my slack adjuster and push rod. I have my drum and padding. All not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. Not worn dangerously thin, and no brake contaminants like oil, grease, or sand. Then we'll come to my tires. My tire, the outer, inner, and upper tires are worn evenly across. They're not cut, torn, or bulged, or dry rotted. The tread on my steer tires are 4/32. I check with a tread depth gauge, which is located inside my truck. My air pressure is 95 to 105. I check with an air pressure gauge inside my truck. My steer tires cannot be retreaded or mismatched. I'll go to my rims. My rims and valve stem, all not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. No illegal or unmanufactured holes or welds. My valve stem is pointed outwards, secured with a metal cap, and not leaking. I have my lug nuts. All 10 of my lug nuts are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. No rust trails or metal shavings indicating looseness. I would check all of my tires, rims, valve stem, and lug nuts on the rest of my vehicle the same way, with the exception of the rear tires. Can be 2/32 tread depth. They can be retreaded or mismatched, and my valve stem is pointed inwards, secured with a metal cap, not leaking. I have my tractor marker light, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts, amber in color. I have my DEF tank and my fuel tank are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts, and not leaking. Secure with a cap with a rubber gasket, which is not dry rotted. My fuel lines are not dry rotted, cut, or torn, working properly. And my straps, my metal straps with rubber gaskets, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts, and my gasket is not dry rotted. My fuel lines are not dry rotted, cut, or torn, working properly. And my metal straps, my metal straps with rubber gaskets, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts, and my gasket is not dry rotted. My gasket is not dry rotted. And my metal straps with rubber gaskets, properly secured, no missing nuts or bolts, and my gasket is not dry rotted. My battery and my battery box are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. There's no excessive corrosion, and my terminals are tight. My air and electrical lines, I have my emergency line, I have my service line, and I have my electric line. They are seated and sealed. They are not cracked, bent, broke, loose, missing, or damaged, cut, torn, or frayed, or dry rotted. They are not leaking. I have enough slack to make turns, and they are not laying on my catwalk. The frame of my truck and trailer and its cross members and the wooden floor underneath are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. No unmanufactured holes or welds, and my floor is not dry rotted, and it is strong enough to hold the weight of my load. My trailer marker light up top is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, amber in color. Come to my fifth wheel. My fifth wheel, I have my trailer is connected to my apron. My apron is connected to my kingpin. My kingpin is secured with the locking jaws around it. My skid plate is in a downward position, properly greased, no daylight. My platform pivot pin is secured. My release handle is locked and secured. And my sliding fifth wheel is in a locked position, giving me enough clearance from the rear of my tractor and my landing gears to make turns without hitting. All of it is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured. My rear suspension can be checked the same as the front, with the exception of the airbags, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, not dry rotted, and not leaking. My DOT tape down the side of my trailer are properly secured, red and white, and reflects light. My landing gear leg, my landing gear foot, my A-frame, and my crank handle all are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, properly greased. My handle's in a stowed position, and my feet are raised for clearance of the roadway. I have my ABS light, which is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, amber in color. I have my trailer side marker light, which is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, red in color. I have my trailer marker lights up top, not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, red in color. I have my DOT tape on the door, the top of the door, the bottom of the door, and the bumper, which are secured, red and white, and reflects light. I have my brake lights and turn signals, which are not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, red in color. I have my tag light, which is not cracked, broke, bent, loose, missing, damaged, properly secured, clear in color. I can check everything on the right side of my vehicle the same as my left.